In the near distance, a young black boy trudges down the center of a long country road, his bare feet kicking up dust as he clumsily carries a block of ice purchased at the general store, located nearly 5 miles away in the small, dusty delta town of Muskie. Muskie, the jewel in the crown of the Confederacy, that tiny hamlet, a shining example of the dominance maintained by the losers of the Civil War. There, the power of life and death rested in the hands of any white person, whether 8 or 80. From the finest members of the southern landed gentry right down to the lowest class of sharecroppers, this group of whites maintained the bottom rung on the social ladder. These whites were cruel, bitter, sadistic. They relished the hideous sight of a nigger hanging, a black, mutilated body slowly twisting in the breeze. After all, a lynching was a grand festival, a high carnival, a time of celebration. What could represent good old Dixie more completely than to have a picnic, the meaning of which is pick a nigger, where one would pick out a black man at random, whereupon the unlucky individual would be the chosen sacrifice, a human offering, the heart and centerpiece of what could only be called a circus of agony. The offense, whatever so small, would, and often did, result in the slow and torturous death of some luckless black. There was an odd but little-known custom practiced by the white males of Muskie. When one of the female members of a family reached pubescence, at the first signs of menstruation, the young girl would be required to submit to the most degrading of incestuous demands. The practice of incest is not new, and shall never be old. It was in the performance of a peculiar ritual by the male. At the end of intercourse, immediately after ejaculation, the individual would urinate, all the while maintaining the penis within the vagina. This horrendous act stems from their ignorance, mainly from the assumption that male urine possesses a natural type of spermicide, thus the term Mississippi douche. Down through generations, the result being that for over 90 years there had never been a single unwanted pregnancy. Whether a soul born or a soul dead, the population of Muskie virtually remained the same, approximately 150 souls, all white. Muskie had its laws as well as its secrets. Of its secrets, the author will soon address. But for now, the subject is law. Mainly the sundown law. Most, if not all, small towns below the Mason-Dixon line enforced its own sundown law. A wooden sign is nailed to a post at the edge of town, a warning for blacks to behave, a constant reminder to all passers-by, "Nigger, don't let the sun set on your ass in this town." In this, Muskie was no different than any other small delta community. But its secrets, the dark secrets of Muskie, lurked in a cyclopean oak tree that loomed ominous in the center of the town's square, hidden amid the haunted shadows of blood-stained branches that reached out like arthritic fingers contorted in pain. Its thick, dark bark would begin emitting an odor. A foul, sickening stench would arise, fumes that caused many an individual to begin retching, the nausea growing with every halting breath, the smell of which could be only described with one word: death. The noxious emissions arising after every lynching, the stench of death permeating the town, after which an unsettling phenomenon would occur. The pores of the tree would begin to ooze. A thick, blood-red sap would cause insects near and far to become imprisoned by the gleaming resin, they too becoming one of the many blood sacrifices demanded by the tree. That wooden monster, it was the town's greatest secret. Was it alive? A living thing? One could sense a certain intelligence, a strong malevolence reflected in its gnarled and twisted limbs. This was the illustrious southern town of Muskie. Beneath the orange-yellow glow of the sun, on a hot Mississippi afternoon, the figure of a young black boy slowly begins to appear on the horizon. his bare feet kicking up small clouds of dust. As he approaches, it is apparent that the young individual is encumbered by a heavy object. A considerable size block of rapidly melting ice is clumsily maneuvered from one hand to the other. His 13-year-old frame reflected a life filled by endless hours of bitter drudgery, months, years of unceasing toil, nights of gnawing hunger followed by long sweat-soaked days of searing thirst. In those days, life could be very hard for a family of sharecroppers. As for a black sharecropper, life was often downright unbearable, a living nightmare. But on certain rare occasions, a bright spot would appear, a brief respite, a celebration, whether a new birth or a recent passing of an elderly church member. Whatever small glimmer of joy that presented itself would immediately be seized, clutched, held tightly, a precious thing to be relished. Dear God, to smile, to laugh, and really feel it, to rise above the waves of fear, waves that come rushing in like a flood, drowning the individual in a tide of white hatred, hatred that raged like a storm, then slowly receding. This day was one of those rare occasions, a cheerful day of smiling black faces. For just down the road, amid the small cluster of tar paper shacks, the sound of raucous revelry echoed. The day's event, a party, a birthday party, in fact, more of a coming-of-age party for the young Mr. Perkins. It being his 13th birthday demanded certain responsibilities from him. He was no longer a child. Today, Mr. Perkins was a man, and this being his first day of manhood, he would naturally receive a rare treat. Homemade ice cream. He being the guest of honor, it fell upon him to retrieve the ice from the large red brick ice house located in the town of Muskie several miles away. He was required to trod the seemingly endless road. Young Perkins' anger growing, he occasionally stops, gives vent to his frustration with loud, profane adjectives. His ill-tempered mood suddenly changes as his eyes fall upon a figure in the distance. Young Mr. Perkins stops, standing in the center of the road. As he gazes, a smile slowly spreads across his face. "Hey, fool!" shortly echoes a mocking voice, wearing a smile as broad as that of young Mr. Perkins, approaches a young man of similar age, as well as dress. Walking at a quick pace, the individual voicing witty witticisms is none other than Kevin. Kevin Jones is young Mr. Perkins' best friend and closest confidant. "Help me with this ice," demands young Perkins. "It's your birthday, fool. You're the one that wants ice cream," replied Kevin in a mocking tone. He relieves young Perkins of his cool burden, all the while smiling that wry smile that only Kevin Jones could smile. The two had grown up together. Not sharing the same home, they weren't related. Young Mr. Perkins was raised by his elderly grandmother. A small 2-room tar paper shack was what they called home. Emma was her name, Emma Perkins, but those who knew her addressed her as Miss Emma. Having raised young Mr. Perkins from his childhood, she was all the family he knew. His father died while young Perkins was still an infant, mysteriously vanishing one summer afternoon while on an errand in town. The talk around the black community suggests that he had been lynched, presented as a sacrificial offering, something to slate the rapacious appetite of the tree. Believing the rumors which were most likely true, Mr. Perkins' mother slowly grieved herself to death, and within a year she too had joined her husband. While still a child, young Perkins often questioned his grandmother about his mother and father, whereupon his grandmother would turn her head and look afar off, her eyes reflecting the most mournful of sorrows. Inhaling, then exhaling with a sigh, she would merely reply, "Let them rest, child. Let the dead rest." Miss Emma no longer worked in the fields. She had indeed at one time been a laborer, her youth worn away by days of back-breaking toil. She too had lost her husband at an early age. Years ago he had mysteriously gone missing after a visit to Muskie. Miss Emma, being in her late 70s, was obliged to earn her living by baking pies, especially her famous, delicious blackberry pies. They were everyone's favorite. Both blacks and whites loved Miss Emma's delicious fruit pies. The crust of the pies was Emma's personal secret, light, flaky, deliciously seasoned with a flavorful spice that greatly enhanced the taste. Kevin, on the other hand, led a life most different from that of young Perkins. There were 9 people in Kevin's home, including his mother and father, his father being away most of the time in a fruitless attempt to find employment. All girls. They ranged in ages from 5 to 10. Being too young to work in the fields, it fell upon Kevin to play the role of babysitter. He would stay home and watch his young sisters while his mother and his Aunt Hazel would earn their day's wages in the field. Although Kevin's aunt did work in the field, she didn't particularly need the money. She had been granted a small but agreeable allotment after her husband's untimely death. She was a lonely widow and merely wished to spend time with her only sister. Kevin's aunt was a young, cheerful woman in her mid-30s. She was of average height, dark-complected, her color resembling that of a mixture of chocolate, honey, and amber. Her dimpled smile gracefully enhanced an already beautiful face. Many times young Perkins had sat on the front stoop of Kevin's home just to watch his mother and aunt returning from the fields. He loved to see the golden rays of the sun glistening, gleaming. How resplendent! The way it reflected against her shiny, sweat-soaked skin. She was the pride of the community, a great catch for any male, anyone man enough to woo her. Most men found themselves speechless in her presence. Her beauty intimidated most of her suitors. Some would begin stuttering, while others would merely avoid eye contact looking down. They would sheepishly mutter out, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, would you? Do you? Could you? Go out Saturday night?" The answer of which would always be no. Hazel wasn't trying to be cruel, not at all. She enjoyed the attention. You see, Hazel had been widowed 4 times in her life. Her first husband perishing in the Muskie River. His body had never been recovered. After a respectable duration of grieving, she once more became a bride, only to be widowed a mere 6 months later after the discovery of her husband's mangled body on a section of track at the edge of town. Again the veil dawned the head of the lovely widowed bride, entering into matrimony. She married a strapping example of manhood. George was his name, George Fraser, tall, deep-complected with broad, straight shoulders, the very figure of health. But within weeks, his health began slowly to fail. A steady march to the cemetery loomed. Loss of appetite. What was the deterioration in health? The nature of the mysterious malady remains a mystery. When at last, the cold fingers of death mercifully closed the eyes of the emaciated skeletal figure of that of the late George Fraser, rumors began circulating about there being some sort of curse. Many thought that perhaps old Granny Hagan had placed a curse on her. The black community referred to her as simply the Conjure Woman. When mentioning her, people spoke in low tones and hushed whispers. It was said that the Conjure Woman was over 100 years old, feared by some, hated by others. All dreaded her coming. She was always accompanied by a large black cat. Around its neck, a small silver bell chiming a warning to all of her approach. Nothing boded more evil than to have her shadow fall upon you. Stooped by age, she walked from county to county, selling her small bottles of potions and elixirs. Her head and shoulders shaded from the sun by a long, ragged shawl. This made her appear the very shadow of doom. Her frail frame, aided by the use of a short cane, fashioned from the branch of an old oak tree. At a glance, it was easy to see that the wood of the cane was old, ancient, as gnarled and twisted as the conjurer woman herself. After a few years, talk about the curse died down, until one day, wedding bells once more began ringing in the life of the widow Hazel. This time the groom was of a much different cut, short, squat, and extremely rotund. That, along with his extreme nearsightedness, made him a comical character, but nonetheless just as doomed as his predecessors. The name of the fourth and final victim is lost to history, whereas the manner of his earthly departure is still remembered. While returning from the town carrying a store-bought ham for the Easter celebrations, he had been attacked by a pack of wild dogs. His mangled, half-devoured body lay in the road for hours as the vicious beasts roamed the countryside, wreaking havoc. Those who managed to glimpse the pack declared that the dogs were of an unusual breed. Thick, black, shaggy coats covering a heavy frame, with eyes that seemed to glow a fiery red at night as well as day. After this, there was no guessing. There was, without a doubt, a curse. And the only one who possessed that type of dark magic was the conjurer woman, old Granny Hagen herself. For Hazel, desired by many and rejecting all, was hereafter doomed to play the role of widow. She bore her burden well. A cheerful disposition, a warm, dimpled smile was offered equally to all, as Kevin and young Perkins struggle with the ungainly block. After a considerable amount of time fumbling for the screen door, the two somehow manage to enter the tiny wooden frame house where the party is being held. A booming chorus of laughter erupts as the two stumble in. Several black men sit around a small kitchen table involved in the game of cards. One of the men, without looking up, leans over and retrieves a large serving bowl containing an ice pick. Without saying a word, the young men go to the task of chipping the ice. Aside from the loud oaths and drunken laughter, the voices of women are heard in the backyard. The women surrounding a long wooden table vary widely in age, going from toothless toddler to old toothless dawdlers. The lion's share of females belonged to Kevin's family. It is true, various cakes and pies did grace the table. However, the centerpiece, sitting like a king at court, presiding over the day's festivities, reigned the ice cream maker. A woman from the table calls out to one of the men inside. Shuffling and angry murmurings issue from the mouth of the man. A balding, gray-haired, pot-bellied, middle-aged black man stands at the partially open back screen door, grimacing as the glare of the sun strikes his face. "Check that meat," Kevin's mother orders the man. The man, all the while muttering to himself, he lazily performs the task. Walking over to the smoky barbecue grill, the man removes a large metal fork from a nail. He begins to turn slab after slab, all the while dabbing the ribs with a rich barbecue sauce. Inside the home, a large pot of collard greens simmer. Today's fare being barbecue spare ribs, potato salad, corn on the cob, collard greens, and hot water cornbread. But the most welcome treat being the presence of the ice cream. Finally, the time Kevin and young Perkins had so eagerly awaited. The large container of ice was carried outside and placed inside the old wooden hand-crank ice cream maker. Various fruits were placed into the old wooden machine. All the while, Kevin frantically working the hand-crank, turning out pint after pint of cool, silky, smooth blackberry ice cream. The cooking now complete, the long hours of waiting at an end. The group, both men and women, sit at the large, rickety table in the center of the backyard. Full platters and large serving bowls serve as delicious reminders of the long-awaited feast. Greasy black fingers grip the ends of large, buttery ears of ripe, yellow corn. Teeth, hungrily devour slab after slab of tender pork spare ribs. Following the meal, the customary cake is brought out. A rousing round of "Happy Birthday" rings out, bringing down the curtain on the day's festivities. As full bellies press against tight clothing, a frantic cry for help shatter the peace of the day. Bursting onto the scene stood the dirty, sweat-soaked figure of a young teen. Beneath the dirty overalls was a body bearing the marks of years of abuse. Jonah. The look of fear in his eyes told all. Silas was back. Silas, the drunken brute. Silas, the cravenly wretch. Silas, loathed by all. He was the thing that called itself a man. Silas earned his living by running little errands for the town's whites. Nothing was beneath him. No task too foul. No chore too degrading. All the black community hated him, even when it was illegal for blacks to testify in court. Good old Uncle Silas would be called to testify on behalf of whatever white man found himself the defendant in a case involving a Negro, whether it be rape, murder, or arson. Silas was your nigger, your running dog. He knew full well what hate existed behind those faces. He could feel the malevolence. It ran deep, to the bone, to the marrow, down to the very gut of his soul. No one hated Silas more than Silas himself. The only time he ever felt like a man was when he was drinking, or drunk, which was daily. That's when he would become a man. That's when the demands began. The punches thrown, the blows landed, slaps received. Jonah had every reason to want to avoid Uncle Silas. Saddest of all was the fact that Jonah had a mother, a kind and loving woman that was present there at the party. Bessie May was her name. Bessie was a soft-spoken, heavy-set girl. She had a youthful face, but very little confidence. Bessie May was lacking in the very things she needed most. Simply respect. Basic self-respect had been beaten out of her years ago, not by his fist, but by his biting tongue, his cruel mockery. Her poor, battered soul bore the marks of 1,000 scars delivered by his innumerable tongue lashings. Bessie May bore no marks of injury. There were no outward signs of abuse, but she had, nonetheless, been a victim, tortured, tormented by the drunken brute that called her wife, the brute she called husband. "Where's my boy?" inquires an angry, drunken Silas. Staggering across the lawn, he glares at the group through dim, yellow eyes. The group failed to respond. Lips remain silent, while eyes gaze in judgment. "What y'all looking at?" Silas scowls, his eyes searching. "What you doing here?" Questions an angry Miss Emma. "You know you ain't got no business around here." "That's right. Get on out of here, you old drunk," yells Kevin's 10-year-old sister. All the while, Jonah remains hidden behind the group of women, cowering in fear. Clenching his eyes tightly, he begins to pray silently. "Dear God, if you're real, help me. I hate him. I wish he was dead," murmurs Jonah, as he gently places dirty fingers to a badly split and swollen lip. Gazing down at his fingertips, it is only then that he notices the crimson color of blood and feels the stinging pain. The group of men attempt to calm Silas, the balding, middle-aged man stepping forward. "Come on now, Silas." He speaks in a calm and soothing tone as he approaches the drunkard, placing a hand on Silas's shoulder. "Now don't be like that, Silas. I'm your friend." The scowl on Silas's face begins to soften. With slurred speech, the inebriant loudly voices his frustration. "You don't respect me. None of y'all. Damn it. I'm a man." "We know you is," replies the balding man. "Y'all knows I tries to do right by my boy. Ain't that right?" Silas's bloodshot eyes gaze at his wife, questioning, searching for some small semblance of approval. "Yes, Silas, you always been a good man," she shamefully replies, her humiliation growing. Angered by his mother's self-debasement, Jonah explodes in a rage. "Here I am." Jonah stands erect, hands balled into fists. "I ain't scared of you, damn you, Silas. You put your hands on me for the last time. Next time you touch me, I kill you. I swear to God." "Jonah," his mother cries out in anguish. "Baby, I'm sorry. Mama, sorry." Unable to control his seething hatred, Jonah's anger builds to a fever pitch. "Damn you, Silas. God damn you all to hell. I wish I was dead." With that, Silas with an angry arm slings the remaining food from the table, peppering the revelers with the day's remaining fare. With heartbreaking tears, Jonah runs past the table, only to have his arm grabbed by angry fingers. "Got yo' ass, don't I?" his tormentor bellows. "Jesus, don't let him kill him," moans the battered child's mother. The crowd gasps as Silas delivers blow after vicious blow. Slaps and backhands cruelly find their way to the boy's battered, tear-stained face. Loud protests echo from the group as two men rush forward in an attempt to subdue the raging drunkard, only to be met with vicious elbows and violent shrugs. A tense moment turns into a scene of horror as Silas's fist smashed out 2 teeth from the bloody, pulpy face of the wretched child. The sickening scene causes Kevin to retch. Doubling over, he begins vomiting. Every muscle straining, Jonah manages to muster enough strength to break free from the drunkard. Screaming curses through a horribly mutilated mouth, Jonah runs, pursued closely by a livid Silas. Blinded by the pain, deaf to all other voices, heedless of the group's shouts of warning, Jonah continues running, only to stumble, falling at the very feet of doom. Oh, unlucky, unlucky Jonah, for the shadow of the conjure woman passed completely over him. "Oh, Lord Jesus, no, no, he's been overshadowed," voiced one of the onlookers. Jonah's horribly mangled face becomes a hideous mask as his mouth emits a soundless scream. Doom. His mouth haltingly gurgles out the word doomed, fully aware of the hellish fact that he would soon join the ranks of those unhappy souls whom her shadow touched. The group stands frozen in disbelief. All eyes remain fixed on the foreboding figure of the conjure woman as she slowly passes by, her cane tapping the hard soil, the old woman's black cat's silver bell chiming into the distance. Jonah rises, screaming, shrieking. He bolts down the road in the opposite direction, running as if demon-possessed, soon to disappear from sight. The scene was all too much for Jonah's mother, Bessie May, who emits a blood-curdling scream as she collapses there on the spot. Silas haplessly gazes at the crowd, his eyes questioning, pleading, his wretched soul starving for a simple word of solace. Faces look away, eyes avoid contact as the dazed crowd of onlookers slowly begins to disperse. A deep concern for his cousin's mental state causes young Perkins to ask his grandmother for permission to go and find Jonah. "That's a good boy," she replies, "and when you find him, bring him home to me." "But what if Silas?" "Silas, nothing," cutting the young man off. "You just worry about Jonah. I'll worry about Silas," she replies with a defiant sneer. Young Perkins smiles, knowing full well that Silas, though a brutish degenerate, would never dare encroach upon Miss Emma's privacy. Miss Emma was a community elder. Even he knew better than to oppose her. The dim light of dusk settles into darkness around young Perkins as he searches the usual places that Jonah would run to after being punished by Silas. Then it struck him like a bolt of lightning, like a shotgun blast. A cold electric tingle ran down his spine as he suddenly realizes exactly where Jonah was, walking into the jaws of death, playing with hell, laying in the lap of the grim reaper. Jonah was in Muskie. Looking up at the nickel-plated moon, the gentle chirp of crickets tickles the night. The silver hue of twilight raises the stars. As pungent as the funk of summer, as dangerous as a high-wire act with no net, Jonah was daring to do what no sane Negro would ever dream of doing. He was going to do the impossible. He was going into the jaws of death. Walking through the streets of Muskie at night was tantamount to entering the very gates of hell. Jonah was playing a dangerous game. He was tempting fate. He was lying in the lap of the Grim Reaper. Jonah was going to Muskie. The fool, young Perkins unconsciously exclaims. Speaking out loud, he deliberates on what course to take. Should I go back to my grandma? Should I tell Jonas's folks? Should I do it myself? Should I go and get Jonah? Should I brave the perils of Muskie? Gathering his courage, young Perkins sets out in the direction of town. After what seems a lifetime, he arrives at the outskirts of Hell's own heart. Muskie was waiting. Frightened eyes peer through the shadowy night. The young black boy stealthily tries the knobs of the doors of the various shops. Finding every door securely locked, Jonah begins peeping through the open windows of houses. The mew of a stray cat sounds over the rhythmic chorus of summer insects. Through one window, an old woman sits in her rocking chair gently stroking a purring cat. Sleepy eyes slowly close as it rests comfortably in her lap. While peering through another window seated around the kitchen table, billows of cigar smoke cloud the air as four white men are engrossed in a game of poker. One of the men angrily shouts profanities, while another emits coarse laughter. A bottle of room-temperature beer is tilted and drained. House after house, in the stillness of the night, Jonah continues to spy. Noticing that the kitchen window of the deputy's house was open, the glow of an overhead light was an irresistible invitation. The voyeur in Jonah drew him close. He was intrigued by the sound of slapping. Was it someone being spanked? Surely someone was being punished. The sounds of angry grunts and whimpering moans piqued Jonah's interest, luring him ever closer. "Jonah?" Young Perkins calls in a half-whisper. Receiving no answer, he continues to haunt the shadows of the night, all the while fearful of discovery. No black man, woman, or child had dared defy the sundown law. Jonah was the first. A sort of pride welled up inside of young Perkins. If they only knew, he thought to himself. Just the thought of all those hateful whites who lay snug in their beds, fast asleep, while two little niggers invade the town's sanctity. A smile slowly spreads across young Perkins' face. His fear begins to ebb. A giddy feeling rushes over young Perkins. He is gripped by a sense of power. They don't know, the young man thinks to himself. They haven't got the slightest clue. Yes, Jonah may have indeed been the first, but young Perkins could forever boast that he had been the second. But who would believe him? He needed a witness. He needed to find Jonah. But where? The sound of a dog barking in the distance alerts young Perkins as to the whereabouts of his foolish companion. Honing in on the dog's growling, the young man comes within view of his companion. "Jonah," he calls in a hoarse whisper. "Jonah." Again and again, young Perkins calls out the name, each time creeping closer and closer. What was he doing? What was he looking at? Standing within inches of the open window, Jonah stares transfixed. The dim yellow glow of the light bulb softly illuminates Jonah's badly swollen face, giving him the appearance of something otherworldly, but the expression he bore. My God, what was he seeing? Tipping up behind Jonah, young Perkins saw. Through the open kitchen window, two black boys stood staring, mesmerized at the shocking sight of the deputy in full flagrante delicto. Bent over the kitchen table was Lucinda, the deputy's 13-year-old sister. The rhythmic slapping sound Jonah heard was the sound of flesh on flesh. For the first time, from the town's foundation, no one had ever actually stood witness to the foul, loathsome act of a Mississippi douche. They would be the first. his sweat-soaked, khaki-colored shirt unbuttoned all the way down, pants down around ankles. The deputy's wiry frame delivers thrust after thrust. Greasy black hair clings to the deputy's forehead. The pock-marked, pimple-peppered face forms a helpless leer. The mouth slowly begins opening, revealing crooked, tobacco-stained teeth. A thin drop of saliva dribbles down the chin, eyes clenched tight as he gives a final heavy thrust. Ah! The tight grip around the young girl's waist relaxes. His passion spent, he lay atop the young girl. The sound of heavy panting dies away. "Is you finish?" the young girl impatiently asks. "Nah, you know good and well what come next." The young girl gives a heavy sigh. "Why, you always gots to be doing that." Whereupon the deputy angrily exclaims, "Y'all can't be having no baby. You too young. Hell, I'm yo brother. We be kin. Shit." The young girl deeply inhales, then exhales in exasperation. "Gon do it then," she commands through gritted teeth. Whereupon the deputy begins to urinate inside the young girl's barely nubile womb. A muffled sound like water poured on cotton is heard, as long thin strips of the briny tea slowly begin cascading down immature legs. A disgusting, amber-colored urine flow in streams, forming puddles around the heels of dirty feet, its dark hue stained burgundy by the young girl's menstrual blood. My God, my God. At last, the mystery had been revealed. They were the first to actually witness someone performing the horrendously degenerate act of a Mississippi douche. My God. "Gotcha, nigger." The hands of an enraged white man clamp solidly around Jonah's forearm. "You black son of a bitch. Oh, doom, doom." Immediately upon seizing the youth, Jonah again was forced to endure the unendurable, as sharp slaps and biting blows rained down. The look of terror in Jonah's swollen, terrified eyes softened as he contemplates the absurdity of it all, oblivious to the fact that his face was now a hideous mass of bloody meat. Through the open window, young Perkins sees the deputy hurriedly strapping on his pistol belt.
Okay, let's dive into something truly, well, unsettling today.
Yeah, this one's definitely heavy.
We're opening up excerpts from a piece of writing, fictional, but profoundly disturbing. Muskie. Sundown Shadow, a Mississippi douche. And this isn't just a story, right? It feels like a window into, well, a really dark corner of human experience. It paints this picture of a small, dusty delta town in Mississippi.
Steeped in secrets, yeah. And just overshadowed by this extreme prejudice described in the text.
Exactly. So our mission, like always, is to kind of navigate these layers, the societal norms, the personal tragedies, and some, frankly, shocking customs.
To try and understand the mechanisms of control and, the human cost that's being described here.
What's really compelling, I think, is how the author doesn't just list events.
No, it's more than that. They meticulously build an entire world. It's like this stark microcosm where the unspeakable is presented as just normal, horrifyingly normal.
Right. It really makes you look closely at how power and fear and these really deep-seated beliefs can just fundamentally warp a community.
Yeah, creating its own kind of twisted logic. So we'll be exploring not just what supposedly happened in Muskie, but the social fabric itself.
And the psychological stuff underneath it all.
Exactly. What allowed these practices to persist, at least according to this source material.
And just a heads up, as we get into this, the insights are pretty intense. It asks us to confront some, challenging aspects of human nature and history.
Definitely.
We'll follow the journey of a young boy, Mr. Perkins, witness the town's public cruelty, but also its most horrifying sort of hidden rituals.
So what can we really learn from this really disturbing narrative about these dark corners?
Let's find out. Okay, so our journey into Muskie, it starts with this image. Almost idyllic, actually.
Yeah. The source says, the golden-orange glow of the sun shines down on a hot, sultry Mississippi afternoon.
But that feeling doesn't last long. It quickly shifts to this harsh reality for a young black boy, Mr. Perkins. He's only 13, a sharecropper.
And we find him trudging down this long country road, bare feet kicking up dust.
Clumsily carrying this block of ice, right? melting fast. He bought it nearly 5 miles away in Muskie.
Yeah, and you can almost feel the heat, the weight of it. It's such a simple image, but it speaks volumes about his everyday struggle.
It really does. And that image, it immediately connects us to what Muskie is really about.
Absolutely. The source calls it the jewel in the crown of the Confederacy.
Wow.
Yeah, a shining example, it says, of the dominance maintained by the losers of the Civil War. This isn't just background, it's about power structures that didn't go away.
Right. Enduring power.
And the text is blunt. In Muskie, the power of life and death rested in the hands of any white person, whether 8 or 80.
Any white person, that's chilling.
It sets this incredibly oppressive stage. Cruelty isn't just allowed, it's systemic. Upheld by everyone from the, quote, finest members of the southern landed gentry right down to the lowest class of sharecroppers.
And to make that crystal clear, the narrative brings in this explicit rule, the sundown law. There's a sign, a wooden sign at the edge of town, nailed to a post. And it uses a deeply offensive racial slur, basically warning black individuals, don't be here after sundown.
It's a constant direct threat. It shapes every single aspect of life for black people there, a stark line. You belong here, but only at certain times, or else.
Under that threat of violence.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And building on that terror, the author really gets into the practice of lynching.
Which the source describes not as a crime, but
as a public spectacle, a tool of absolute control. It was considered a grand festival, a high carnival.
and even, unbelievably, a picnic.
Yeah, that grotesque phrase, which the text says meant pick a nigger, selecting a black man, often at random, for sacrifice.
Sacrifice, just horrifying language.
It was the human offering, the heart and centerpiece of what the source calls a circus of agony.
A circus of agony, wow.
It emphasizes how even the smallest thing, or maybe nothing at all, could lead to this slow, public, torturous death, designed purely to terrorize the whole community.
But beneath that public terror, there's something even deeper, more unsettling, the secret.
Right. Looming in the town square is this tree. The author calls it a cyclopean oak tree.
Cyclopean, that word itself is heavy.
Huge, ancient, almost monstrous, like it has one terrifying eye, and its features are described vividly. Blood-stained branches.
Reaching out like arthritic fingers contorted in pains, like evil itself is personified in this tree.
Exactly, and why do that? Why not just focus on the human perpetrator?
Good question. What role does this tree actually play?
Well, according to the source, it's profoundly macabre, almost like an active participant in Muskie's rituals.
An active participant? How?
After every lynching, its thick, dark bark supposedly starts to emit this foul, sickening stench, the smell of death. And the smell would just hang over the town, a constant awful reminder.
And then there was something else.
Yeah, this unsettling phenomenon. A thick, blood-red sap would start to ooze from its pores, trapping insects like it was bleeding.
Oh my God.
The source calls it a wooden monster. It even questions if it was alive, if it had intelligence and malevolence.
So by making the tree seem like this living, evil thing,
the author kind of externalizes the town's evil. It's not just about individual bad acts, but this deeper, malevolent force woven into the very fabric of Muskie. An ancient, persistent horror.
And this isn't just symbolic for the black community, is it? It hits close to home.
Very close. The text explains Mr. Perkins' own father. He mysteriously vanished one summer afternoon. He was on an errand in town.
Vanished.
And the rumors were he'd been lynched, a sacrificial offering for that tree.
Terrible.
And his grandmother, Mrs. Emma, she lost her husband the same way years ago after he went to Muskie.
So the tree is this direct, devastating presence in their family history, linking the public terror to their private grief.
Absolutely. But despite all that fear, the suffering described as endless hours of bitter drudgery, nights of gnawing hunger, waves of white hatred, despite all that.
The source still shows us these moments of black community life. Resilience.
Yeah, like today in the story, it's Mr. Perkins' 13th birthday, a coming-of-age party.
And they're celebrating with homemade blackberry ice cream. A rare treat, you imagine, cherished.
A brief moment of joy, seized and held onto even under that constant duress. It shows their enduring humanity.
And within this scene, we meet some key characters.
Right. Mrs. Emma Perkins, the grandmother, his anchor, his best friend Kevin Jones from A Big Family.
And then Kevin's aunt, Hazel.
Yeah, Hazel. Young, cheerful, beautiful, but a widow 4 times over.
4 times, that's a lot.
And her story really highlights how the community mixes superstition with the brutal reality they face.
How so? What happened to her husbands?
Mysterious, violent ends. One drowned in the Muskie River, another mangled on the train tracks, a third died from some mysterious malady,
Good grief.
and the fourth was attacked by a supposed pack of wild dogs with fiery red eyes.
Wild dogs with fiery red eyes. Okay, that sounds supernatural.
Exactly. And these repeated tragedies, the source tells us, led people to whisper about a curse,
A curse. From who?
attributed to the conjure woman, Granny Hagen.
Ah, the Conjure woman. Tell me about her.
Described as over 100 years old, feared, hated, dreaded, always seen with a large black cat wearing a silver bell so you'd hear her coming.
Interesting.
And it was believed her very shadow brought bad luck, evil.
So, in a world where these horrible things happen for no apparent reason, blaming a curse, a conjure woman,
It offers a framework, right? However terrifying, it's a way to try and make sense of the senseless.
when the real perpetrators are untouchable or unknown.
Precisely. It provides a narrative, maybe even a tiny bit of psychological distance in a world where they have so little control. It's a coping mechanism.
Right, a way to explain the inexplicable. So back to the party. It's in full swing.
Yeah, a really vibrant scene. Men playing cards, women gathered, talking, the smell of barbecue spare ribs, potato salad, corn, greens.
A rare moment of just shared joy, laughter, community.
You really feel that brief pocket of happiness, but you also hold your breath wondering.
How long did it last in a place like Muskie?
Not long. The author shatters that peace pretty brutally with the arrival of Silas.
Silas, who is he?
He's Jonah's father, described as a drunken brute, a cravenly wretch, loathed by everyone in the black community, apparently.
Why? What's his role?
It's tragic and complex. He runs errands for whites, but crucially, he testifies for white men in court cases involving black people.
Even though black people weren't legally allowed to testify against whites.
Exactly. The text portrays him basically as an informant, an instrument of white oppression against his own people.
Wow, that raises a huge question, doesn't it? What happens to a community when one of their own becomes a tool for the oppressor?
And what are the costs? Internally, externally, it's devastating.
For Silas himself, and obviously for his family, the confrontation sounds incredibly tense.
It is. Silas staggers in, drunk, angry, demanding his son, Jonah.
And Mrs. Emma, the grandmother.
She confronts him with incredible defiance. Even Kevin's little 10-year-old sister yells at him to leave.
And Jonah.
He's hiding, cowering, praying for Silas to die, the text says. His lip is already split and swollen from earlier abuse.
Just awful.
Oh.
And his mother, Bessie May.
Her situation is heartbreaking, too. Described as a kind and loving woman, but her basic self-respect had been beaten out of her years ago.
Not by fists, the text says.
No, by Silas's words. His biting tongue, his cruel mockery. Her poor battered soul bore the marks of 1,000 scars.
It really shows how oppression works on so many levels. It gets inside, creates suffering within the community itself.
Absolutely. Silas's actions tear apart his own family, his own community, while serving the white power structure.
And the cost to Jonah, witnessing his mother's humiliation, enduring the cruelty, it pushes him.
To his breaking point, he finally snaps.
What does he do?
He stands up, fist balled, and yells, "I ain't scared of you, damn you, Silas. You put your hands on me for the last time. Next time you touch me, I kill you."
Whoa. Brave but dangerous words.
Extremely. What follows is just brutal. Silas beats him viciously, blow after blow.
How bad is it?
So bad. Jonah is left severely injured, disfigured. So horrific that Kevin, his friend watching, actually throws up.
Oh, God. It's graphic.
And as Jonah flees, screaming curses, the narrative takes another dark twist.
What happens?
He stumbles, falls right at the very feet of doom.
Meme.
The source explicitly says, the shadow of the conjure woman passed completely over him.
Granny Hagen's shadow.
Oh no, and someone watching cries out, "Oh Lord Jesus, no, he's been overshadowed."
So they believe he's literally doomed now.
Yes. Jonah runs off, screaming in terror. Everyone thinks his fate is sealed. It powerfully mixes that immediate violence with their deepest fears and superstitions.
So Jonah's run off.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Miss Emma, with this defiant sneer at Silas as he leaves, she gives Mr. Perkins permission, tells him to go find Jonah.
She knows Silas wouldn't dare come onto her property.
Right, so young Mr. Perkins heads out. Dusk is falling, turning into darkness.
And then it hits him.
Like a bolt of lightning, Jonah has done the unthinkable.
He's gone into Muskie after dark.
Violated the sundown law. The source calls it walking into the jaws of death, tempting fate, lying in the lap of the Grim Reaper.
Just a desperate act of defiance.
Totally desperate. And Mr. Perkins decides to follow him, which is also huge.
A real contrast to the fear they live with every day.
It is. Perkins feels scared at first, naturally. But then the text says a giddy feeling rushes over him. He feels this sense of power.
Power? How?
Thinking about all those hateful whites who lay snug in their beds fast asleep, while two little black boys invade the town's sanctity.
Ah, okay, so it's this dangerous thrill. And illicit pride in breaking the rules, even with the massive risk.
Exactly. It's a really complex psychological thing, finding a moment of agency, even if it's just defiant trespassing in the face of overwhelming terror.
So Perkins follows the sound of a barking dog.
Yeah, and eventually he spots Jonah, finds him just transfixed, staring through an open window.
Whose window?
The deputy's house.
The deputy, oh boy.
And Jonah's face, already badly swollen, looks otherworldly. His expression is profound.
So Perkins creeps up behind him. What on earth are they seeing? What could hold Jonah like that, right in the heart of danger?
This brings us to it. The most disturbing revelation. The deepest hidden law of Muskie.
Okay, what is it?
Through that open kitchen window, Perkins sees what Jonah's watching. The deputy, a white man,
Yes.
performing what the source calls the Mississippi douche on his own 13-year-old sister, Lucinda.
The Mississippi douche? What is that? The source explains it.
It does, and it's horrific. It describes this act of sexual assault combined with a kind of pseudo-contraception
Pseudo-contraception.
performed by white men on young white girls, often relatives, based on this completely twisted, ignorant belief.
What belief? And what's the deputy's reason?
His stated motivation, according to the text, is chillingly blunt. Y'all can't be having no baby, you too young, hell. I'm your brother, we be kin, shit.
Oh my God. He's saying that to his sister.
Yes, and after the assault, he urinates inside her.
No. That's stone delete. I have no words. That's the douche.
That's what the source indicates. It stems from this profound ignorance, the text says, mainly from the assumption that male urine possesses a natural type of spermicide.
That's medically absurd. Completely wrong.
Utterly. But this custom, this horrifying practice, was supposedly passed down through generations.
With what result?
A chilling statistic presented in the text. For over 90 years, there had never been a single unwanted pregnancy in Muskie.
Yeah, the population.
Remained tiny. Approximately 250 souls, all white.
So this ritual, this abuse, was a hidden law designed to keep the town small and exclusively white.
That's exactly how the source presents it, maintaining control, maintaining this perverted idea of purity through extreme hidden abuse. Protected by ignorance and systemic violence.
It's the ultimate expression of the town's control and self-definition.
And the horror of witnessing this for the boys, it's profound.
The source says, at last the mystery had been revealed. They were the first to actually witness someone performing the horrendously degenerate act of a Mississippi douche.
It's this moment of terrible enlightenment, seeing the absolute depth of the town's depravity.
But they're still in incredible danger.
Immediate, chilling danger. Suddenly, a voice bellows, "Gotcha, nigger."
Oh no.
An enraged white man grabs Jonah's arm, solidly. Violence erupts again instantly, sharp slaps, biting blows.
And the deputy.
Perkins sees him through the window, hurriedly strapping on his pistol belt.
So Jonah escaped Silas's violence.
Only to be caught in the systemic terror of Muskie itself, right after witnessing its deepest, ugliest secret.
Wow. This deep dive into Muskie, Sundown's shadow, it's really unveiled layers of this fictional world that are just as disturbing as they are revealing.
Yeah, we've seen the public face of racial terror, the control,
The internal struggles, those small moments of resilience in the community.
and then finally this utterly horrifying secret ritual, the thing that maintained Muskie's supposed purity and population through just unspeakable acts.
So if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, what does it mean?
It raises a really crucial question, I think. What happens when a society's deep-seated prejudices, its desire for control, manifest in both that open brutality and these hidden awful acts?
All in the name of some twisted kind of order.
Yeah. The text just powerfully shows how fear, combined with profound ignorance and this relentless desire to maintain dominance, can lead to a community literally built on both public terror and private degradation.
So, thinking about this, what does it mean for you, listening? Maybe consider how secrets, personal, familial, societal, how they can become these powerful, unwritten laws.
Laws that shape lives, right, and perpetuate cycles of harm and injustice.
Definitely. The story of Muskie leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, I think. What other dark truths might be hiding beneath the surface of communities that seem ordered on the outside?
And what are the true costs, often invisible, of maintaining those illusions?